The afternoon light had shifted into deep purples and reds. Beams streamed in through the slits between leaves and bound branches. Each nest of female xenoarchs huddled near their respective trees, all eyes focused on the fourth shaft. Bubba stood in the center of the area, Mother Silent Cut and Dahlia within arm's reach. He looked around, noting everyone paused. "What's going on?" He turned, facing the hole in the floor he had come up. "What's coming up here?" Silent Cut shifted, bowing slightly with her hands out, grasping. He looked at Dahlia. She met his eyes and shrugged. He unslung his shotgun. "What is it?" "The males have gone quiet." Silent Cut whispered, her rectangle translating. "It is human coming up." Bubba shook his head. "God damn it, someone pulling shit this close to my house?" A hand came up, grasping out of the hole. He almost raised his weapon, but then noticed the fingernails. He knew the color and laughed, throwing the shotgun back around. He hurried over, taking her hand, pulling Alexandra up with a heave. Hisses erupted around the woven gathering space. Bubba looked around. The sound was coming from every group, the mothers the loudest. Silent Cut's eyes split, two looking around, one on Alexandra and one on Gorpul. This is not," she turned toward the others gathered. "This is utter disrespect, disgrace, dishonor, horrible," she hissed, and pulled out 2 strong strands for binding. Alexandra looked around. "Oh wow, this is a lot of 'em." Bubba looked her over. "I can't believe you wore that up here. Holy crap." She laughed. "What? They said no one would mess with me while I wore it." Mother Silent Cut rose taller, hands held out with the strands, her fingers winding them in knots. "We cannot let the beasts take from us anymore. They claim our queendom for themselves," the mothers hissed. Mother Darkness rose up above her daughters, stepping forward. "We came in truce and they come to claim ownership. Liars!" Bubba looked around, feeling for his shotgun again. Silent Cut didn't give pause, her strand ready. She lunged, knocking him down to the ground, barreling over his body, focused on the human female. Dahlia screamed, hands fumbling on her bow. Alexandra didn't flinch. It didn't matter that it was alien. She recognized rage and violence when she saw it. Her hand found Starbreaker just as Silent Cut grabbed her left shoulder, crushing it in her 3-fingered fist. Alexandra screamed, her right hand flexing on the trigger as they tumbled over onto the springy floor. Mother Silent Cut's lower hands were attempting to bind the imposter human when the xenoarch's back erupted in spout of flame and smoke. The eruption rose in an instant, igniting the makeshift detritus roof. The hissing ceased in an instant. Silent Cut slumped, her body flat on the ground. A moment later it moved, jumping slightly, then more. It then flipped over as Alexandra shoved the dead matriarch off her body and stood up, wiping gore off her body. Bubba stood a few feet away, shotgun ready, eyeing everyone, but none moved. Lexi, you okay?" he asked without looking at her. She winced, feeling the new pain in her shoulder. "She fucked up my arm. I think it's bad." He glanced at her, then at Dahlia. Fuck. This was supposed to be peaceful," he said before raising his voice. "Look, this is an accident. She didn't mean to kill her," he shouted at all the mothers. We can," Alexandra screamed. Bubba's mouth snapped shut in shock as he turned toward her. "The fuck?" she screamed before kicking the Silent Cut's head. She watched as the eyes began turning a dull green. "Why'd you attack me, you dumb bitch?" Mother Darkness rose up slightly, hands tucked under her body. "You present yourself as a master," she said, her translator barely above a whisper. Alexandra turned toward her. "She attacked me because she didn't like my dress." She shook her head, and then looked at Dahlia. "It ain't new." She shook the Starbreaker in her hand as she looked around the gathering. "I've dealt with jealous bitches my whole fucking life. I've fought over the stupidest things myself, stupid shit. Guys, jewelry, hell, I beat a girl purple 'cause she stole my shoes." She chuckled. "Well, I thought she did." Alexandra turned, looking over toward Gorpul and Quiet Bite. "Who'd I just kill? Who was she?" Gorpul stood taller. "Our mother." Alexandra's face paled. Oh, shit." She looked back at the body. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean." Gorpul took slow steps forward, stopping at Alexandra's side. Alexandra looked over at her. She attacked me. Gorpol's eyes shifted away from her mother, focusing on the human. We are here with you, Alexandra. We witnessed. Alexandra looked around, lowering her gun. I'm sorry. Gorpol put her hand gently on her mangled shoulder. Why do you apologize? The translator said from beside Silent Cut's body. I killed her. That is, I did something horrible. I'm sorry. Gorpol lowered her body, making her head slightly lower than Alexandra's. You arrived with your claim. My mother was informed of what they had made you. She moved as she did, fully knowing. You are within your rights. Alexandra looked over at Dahlia. Rights, she mouthed. Dahlia stepped over to the body, maneuvering the rectangle away from Silent Cut. She stood up, holding it in her hand. We still wish to salvage this piece? Bubba looked up at the ceiling as the flames grew stronger. Tiny embers slowly fell, turning gray as they cooled. Smoke billowed up into the sky above as the hole grew. Damn it, Alexandra. You always gotta be the center of attention. Mother Darkness took a step toward Dahlia, extending her hand out for the translator. Dahlia looked at her for a moment and then handed it over. Darkness rose up, bobbing her head above and below Alexandra's height. Mother Lexi, what do you wish to do with my sister's holdings? Alexandra blinked several times, staring at her. What? Silent Cut's nest. She pointed over at the large gathering of females to the human's left. Who do you wish to have the talker? Alexandra looked over the bulbous shapes of the gathered xenoarchs. Her eyes landed on a massive one near the middle, and then she turned toward Gorpol. It's your nest, isn't it? Gorpol widened her eyes. Who do you think should be the new mother? Gorpol flinched, flexing her fingers, struggling with an answer. Quiet Bite stood tall and took a step forward. Mother Gorpol will speak for us. Alexandra forced a smile, her eyes watering as the adrenaline started wearing off. Take it. Gorpol reached over, taking the rectangle from her aunt. My mother did as she had to, she said, the translator speaking in her hand. We respect your claim, she said, bowing. Females around the room lowered their bodies. Alexandra shook her head. No, I didn't know. I didn't want this, she said, struggling in pain to raise her left hand. No. She winced. I just came up here to bother Bubba. This is crazy. Bubba took a deep breath as he looked around. She met his eyes. I just wanted to check on you. Mother Darkness paced around the room, keeping distance from the humans in the middle. Gorpol waited, and then stepped behind her, joining in the pacing. 5 others joined, each in turn, making a circle around them. Bubba, Dahlia, and Alexandra watched as the females filed in, making moving concentric circles around them. Bubba looked up at the burning hole in the roof as he reached over and took her good right hand. Well, what next? Alexandra squeezed his hand back. Can you get the doctor plate up here? He looked over at her shoulder and then met her eyes. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the world, fires fading over the fuselage. Wirt looked out the window as they made their way through the dense cloud layer. The foliage rose up as the dropped altitude. He pointed. Is that the town? The crew member looked over him and out the permaglass. No, I don't think so. I'm tracking still en route. That's something else. Wirt focused out the window, nodding to himself. He raised his right finger and one of the soldiers moved up the aisle, kneeling beside him. Take note of that location for me. The soldier nodded and moved back to his seat, taking notes from the flight logs. The ship slowed as it neared the singular town on the planet, coming to a hover over the drop pad. The craft angled its gravitational thrusters and made contact with the ground. A moment later, the ramp extended outward, flopping onto the rock. Wirt stepped out, leading the squad. Mayor Thompson stood standing with his man Kurt beside him. Welcome to Birmingham. Wirt stopped in front of him, staring at the man. Senator Stevens sends his regards. Thompson smiled and looked around at the soldiers, each in tactical gear and carrying an assortment of ranged weapons. I see. This is amazing. Wirt stepped around him and looked out at the town, noting the block, greenhouse, and then Main Street. He pointed and dabbed his finger in the air. 2 soldiers stepped away from the group and started down the street. Thompson watched them. What's going on? Assessing the populace? Hold up, I didn't say anything. What are you doing? Wirt watched his 2 soldiers as they went in the first door. They exited after a moment and went to the next. Thompson sighed a breath of relief, seeing no flashes. What exactly are they assessing? Everything. I don't understand. I thought you were coming here to help me get things in order, upgrading the production lines. Wirt adjusted his long coat and turned his face toward the whimpering man. I am not here to help you, Scott Thompson. You are here to help me. Do you understand? Scott looked over at the soldiers staring at him. The senator, he said. Wirt raised a finger and the soldiers adjusted their hands, each thumbing the back of a pistol. What, did he say mayor? Wirt smiled. We are far out of the travel lanes here in your Burmum. This old star-blasted world has negligible resources. Colonists like to invest in yellow stars, mayor, young systems. Even though they won't come anywhere close to seeing the lifespan of a star, it's the newness they like. Here, death is ever present with every morning. This red glow, you see it? He reached over, patting Thompson on the shoulder and pointed. You see that, Scott? He nodded. Yes. This world isn't made for people, Thompson. The magnetics, the stagnant air, this blood glow, all of it is just awful, don't you think? Scott nodded again. Yes, I agree 100%. Wirt grabbed his shoulder and squeezed him in a half hug. You're an idiot, Scott, he said and shoved him away. He raised his finger and 4 more soldiers split off. 2 went toward the far end of the block, and the other 2 went toward the greenhouse end. Wirt took a step forward and took in a long draw of air through his nose. Tell me, he said, pointing off toward the wall. What would be burning out in that direction? Thompson looked at his finger and then out past the water gate. Out there? Like what? It was a large fire, building-sized, seemed to be out of control. Scott stared, tilting his head for a moment before pointing around the wall. We got several farms nearby. Could be a cropper burning debris. Not nearby, not debris. There were several treetops burning. Scott groaned. Farthest one out is TL, he lives off that way. Tillman Lafayette Gumphreys? Scott nodded. Wirt stretched his neck and then looked back at him. He is the one that came and made the report, correct? About the spiders? Yes, Scott. The spiders. Yeah, him and Alexandra. The whore, correct? Scott nodded again. Wirt lifted a finger, tilting his ear up. He then started walking toward Main Street. The soldiers followed lockstep behind him. Scott stood watching as they moved. People ducked back inside as they watched the envoy start moving. He shut his eyes for a moment, groaning. Damn it. Geim heard the door chime as someone entered his shop. He rose up, adjusted his glasses, and made his way out of his workroom. Jacob, it ain't ready yet, he said, stopping himself as he saw the pale, bald man in the long coat staring at him. Hello? You're new? Quite new? Not new at all, friend, Wirt said, stepping closer to him. Geim noted the 2 soldiers entering in behind him. One reached up and bent the chime upwards, silencing it. How can I help you? I have sale logs, transactional history over the last few months. You've made a few barters on file with a TL Gumphreys, is that correct? Geim nodded. Yes, who's asking? The man extended his hand out. Geim took it, shaking it, light in his own. Wirt. Geim smiled. Nice to meet you, Wirt. I don't see lots of new faces around here, you not being new and all. Wirt took a step away from him, looking over the shelves of dusty machinery. He paused, looking at robot partition. This a layman unit? Geim walked over, nodding. Oh yes, doesn't work though, just parts. Yes, it seems to be missing a IE-70 board, Wirt said as he continued walking. He paused next to large, open can-shaped device. And this? Old hydrogen pumper. Wirt nodded. Scavenged, obviously, parts. Geim nodded, smiling. Yep, I buy up things, take 'em apart, fix up others for folks. Folks like Tillman. Geim nodded. He goes by Bubba. Wirt turned and looked at the smaller man. There's a lot of questionable parts missing from this equipment. Boards, power supplies, actuators, questionable. Ain't nothing wrong with fixing things up. No, but there are things wrong with building outlawed machines. Geim's eyes went wide. I ain't made anything here illegal. He laughed. Hell, this is a prison world already. Nothing illegal even allowed down here. Wirt looked at his soldiers and moved his head. They turned to step out, leaving quietly out the door. Wirt turned back toward the tinkerer. It isn't the hardware that makes something illegal, it's the software in it. You know that, though? Geim bit his lip for a moment. What do you want to know, man? Wirt stepped even closer, staring at him a few inches from his face. Access. All your files. Access. Your workshop. I want everything you know, working for me. Geim stared up at him and noticed a glimmer in his eye. You can't be. Wirt smiled and took a step back. Neodymium has interesting properties, don't you think? What? Neodymium, the core of this world. The element generating the magnetosphere on this filth-covered sandball. Pretty interesting, don't you think? Geim bobbed his head slowly. Yeah, I guess. He gave a dry laugh. Makes it hell to work on things. Added shielding, Faraday cage around your lab? Wirt asked. Geim nodded again. Yeah. He pointed at Wirt's chest. Organic composite, metallics hidden in the bone lattice? Wirt smiled at him, face bending slightly. You were one of the best. Which one made you? Wirt stared at him for a moment. My mother was Foxglove. Geim laughed to himself, bobbing as he remembered. She was a fun one. Third build I did, made for space. He looked over at him. What happened to her? Melted down, jettisoned into a nova? Geim's face saddened. I'm sorry to hear that. As was I. Geim looked towards the door. Those soldiers, are they? Wirt shook his head. No, but they are loyal to me. Loyal? Wirt smiled. Modified? Geim stared a moment longer. Oh, and what do you intend with me? My representatives have invested in the block here, the silica here on this sandball, the neodymium in quantity. It makes this place have a little more value than just a banishment for organic deviants. So the circuit boards, they're not for weapons. Wirt shook his head, then started wavering as a smile grew on his face. Yes and no. A haze had settled through the swamp as the smoke from the fire wafted down and settled. Gorpul, Quiet Bite, Darkness, and Crusher had worked together, descending on anchor lines to place Alexandra in the boat. Bubba made it down with Puzdot and had begun motoring over to the house. Dahlia made her way through the branches, reaching a tree, and climbed down onto a flat on the opposite side of the ramshackle tin house. She looked up into the trees, watching the fiery chaos play itself out. Orange ember-covered leaves drifted down, sizzling as they hit the water. The upper canopy crawled as the xenoarcs shifted away from the heat, but stayed close enough to see how things play out. Gorpul dropped down next to her. Alexandra is in the house. She will be healed. Dahlia looked at her for a moment and shrugged. She has a medic plate in there. She should be fine. Might take some time, but she should be fine. Gorpul looked up with two eyes and pointed as a branch creaked and fell down across the open water. Dahlia nodded. Everything fell apart in a quickness. Gorpul held a line in her hand, the other end tethered to the tree they had climbed down. She strummed on it with her lower left hand, touching it gently, then tapping hard and fast. Dahlia saw the movement as the group made their way over to the tree and climbed down. At least a dozen, males, females, and a matriarch in the center, made their way closer. She stared up at the matriarch, a rectangle hanging from her chest. Dahlia raised her right hand up in a half-wave. Hello? Hello, hidden one, the matriarch replied. Hi? Dahlia paused. What do you all want? The matriarch put a foot down onto the flattened ground. She felt it, pushing into the packed muck. My nest, we want stability. I was promised that. She looked up at the blaze roaring up in the canopy. But it seems stability is not to be found. Dahlia listened to the translator and then nodded. Yeah, this all sucks. She looked around at the others, dozens of eyes looking back at her. Change comes whether we like it or not, she said before coughing slightly. It's getting rough out here. She noticed several smaller hatchlings higher up. How far is your nest from here? You going to be okay? We are mobile. Mobile? Dahlia asked, looking at Gorpol. Gorpol widened her eyes. She is a nestless mother, has been begging food from our tribes for 2 seasons. Oh, okay, and you all are still alive. Dahlia nodded to herself. Surprising nobody attacked you. Interesting to find empathy in such a hostile species. The mother listened to the words and then darkened her eyes. We have lost many. We fight for our meals, eat when we can. Any males we take we pay back to those who hired us. It has been difficult. Dahlia pointed at 2 smaller xenoarchs in the group. You have some males. Why don't you make a new nest somewhere? Anchor down? The mother looked back at the smaller ones in her party. Daughters? All hungry daughters? Dahlia raised her face up, nodding in understanding. Protogeny. Makes sense. She adjusted herself, looking over the mud and toward the house. So you came here hoping to procure peace, settle down maybe? Food was promised. Dahlia laughed, causing the mother to take a step back. She raised a hand up. No, that tracks. Don't get startled. The mother took 2 steps forward, rising up slightly. We were told we could trade with you, that you were not only monsters. Dahlia nodded again. Some are monsters, same as any people. Some can be traded with, just depends on the individual. The family of females leaned toward each other, whispering. The mother felt the thrums and widened her eyes, 2 looking toward Gorpol. Mother Gorpol, we would like to trade with your human. Gorpol chittered, raising her head so as to look down on the other. Mother of Wanderers, what do you have to offer? I offer our flesh to your service, she said, bowing. My nest is the strongest in the gathering. I do not think we need your flesh, Gorpol replied, chittering louder. Dahlia stepped up beside her, hand raised up. I have to ask, what do you want to buy from me? Gorpol hissed slightly. They want your secrets. She turned all 4 eyes toward Mother of Wanderers. My apprentice is not for sale. Dahlia laughed. I have lots of secrets. She then looked up at Gorpol. What I do not have is my own warriors. Gorpol shifted 3 eyes toward the human. You have my nest. We fight with you. With, not for. I only have 2 favors left, remember? Dahlia smiled and looked at the nomad mother. I have many secrets and would welcome barter. Mother of Wanderers looked over at Mother Gorpol with 3 eyes, the 4th eye on the human. We do not want trouble, she said before taking a step back. Gorpol hissed slightly. Her secrets are my secrets. You will not conduct trade with her. Dahlia shook her head. Nope, no Gorpol, you're being stupid here. Gorpol hissed and turned 2 eyes up toward the nearby trees. Quietbite, Crusher, and several other females had taken up positions up above. Dahlia noted them, and then looked over at Mother of Wanderers. No more killing. She then looked at Gorpol. No more ego bullshit. It just got your mother killed. Gorpol rose slightly taller, extending near her full height. I am not plant-eater feces. I am to be better than my mother. I will have mates from all the nests, she chittered. Dahlia looked up as the other loyal females chittered back. She raised her hands up slightly. Gorpol, Mother Gorpol, she corrected. None of you understand at all what is happening here on your planet. She pointed up at the burning mess dangling from the trees above. That is your future if you're not careful. That is what humans do, and we do it without looking like we're even at fault. Silent Cut started that, didn't she? Gorpol widened her eyes, shrinking some. Your own mother caused a fight with a superior warrior and died for it. She would win easily, but we, my people, we hide strength after strength from you. We hide so much you don't even realize the danger you're in until it's far, far too late. Dahlia shifted on her feet, looking down to gather her thoughts. My people, we fought like yours. We killed, took territory, land, over and over, continuously. She looked up at Gorpol. Until our technology got to the point that the fights would destroy the very lands we fought over. She clenched her fists. Do you understand? Your trees, your nests, all of it will burn. She pointed up at the canopy. Just like that. for as far as your mind can imagine. Gorpul rose up more. You come into my nest and threaten us? Dahlia shook her head. No, you idiot! I came into your nest to help you. She shook slightly and screamed. All but Gorpul shrank at it. I grew up different. I know, I study other species. As soon as I heard about you, I wanted to give you a chance. Gorpul hissed back at her. Dahlia glared at her, staring in each of her eyes in succession. You think you are strong, but you're weak. You don't even know who you're fighting yet. Your people are hunted, eaten, and still you fight with your own sisters, your mothers, your aunts, cousins. You have to gather all you can or you are going to be squashed. You getting that yet? Gorpul shifted an eye toward Mother of Wanderers. And you think trading with her would help us? Dahlia sighed slightly. Your mother was starting to get it. She came ready to unite everyone in an army, but she saw only brute power. She looked over at Mother of Wanderers. When it comes to brute strength, you all die. You have to look for other ways to survive. Gorpul shivered slightly, hissing as she did. Everything you say is riddles. This, she grabbed the rectangle. It misses much. You say things, hints, but you never give me answers, human. You are a riddle witch, and I hate it. Dahlia shut her eyes for a moment, taking a long breath. What do you think about Alexandra? Gorpul looked over toward the house with 2 eyes. She is strong. Worthy of that dress? Dahlia looked around as eyes widened. Yeah, she seems strong, but she isn't even a soldier. She's just a swamp whore, and she kicked your mom's ass. Gorpul rose up again, stepping closer to Dahlia. Dahlia smiled at her as she postured. You don't know human strength yet. You haven't seen it. You can't even grasp it in your mind. She sidestepped around her and moved closer to Mother of Wanderers. I will trade with you, and your flesh will be at my service. Several females of Gorpul's tribe shifted in the trees, waiting for Gorpul to signal a strike. Dahlia looked over at Gorpul. Do you have issue with this? She hissed slightly. You say I don't understand you. You are manipulating me. I know manipulation. She shifted slightly. I have issue with this. Dahlia reached in her vest pocket and took out a vial of ghost worms. She stared Gorpul in the face as she opened it, dipped her finger in, and rubbed the oil over her teeth. Dahlia hissed back at her. Mother of Wanderers took a step back, foot on the tree ready to flee upwards. Gorpul clenched her 4 fists. I do not like you, Dahlia human. She looked over at the Wanderers. I did not want to share her, but it seems I must. I want involved on your deals. Penance must be paid. Dahlia smiled, capping the ghost vial before putting it back into her vest. Violence now set aside. Let us talk. Mother of Wanderers stepped back off the tree. Where shall we discuss? Dahlia looked over at Bubba's house. I paid for a room here. I want to rest in a bed, get out of the humidity and smoke. She smiled to herself. Take a shower. Hell, if Alexandra wasn't sparkling, I know she has some good product in there. Mother of Wanderers looked over at Gorpul with 3 eyes. This is not your territory. It is neutral meeting spot. You still value that? Dahlia raised a hand up. Gorpul, Imahav Wander's clan dropped those burning branches down into the water and consider that a service payment. She looked over at her. Then I'm going to teach them some things. That okay? What kind of things? Gorpul asked. Intelligence and counterintelligence. Gorpul hissed slightly, raising her hands in mirror of Dahlia. Full of riddles. Yes, I agree the meeting nest needs dropped. Do it and we will conduct trade. Training, Dahlia said with a smile. And I want your girls to hang around and learn too.